Hello everyone, friends. My name is Denis Galanzovsky, and tonight we have a lot of very rich information to cover. These include statements from Zelensky regarding when the war in Ukraine might end, as well as some sensational statements from Kolomoiskyi, who couldn't get to court for 2 days. Yesterday and today, he made it and said 2 words each time, and the hearings keep getting postponed and so on, but the statements are once again sensational. And most likely, if it weren't for Kolomoiskyi, the information we're going to discuss today wouldn't have made it into the public information space. Let's go through everything step by step. Watch the video until the end. Like, subscribe, comment, and share it with friends and on your social networks. Thank you, as always, to each of you. Now let's start from the beginning and go through everything. It's going to be intense. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump urged Europeans to pressure Zelensky to make territorial concessions. During a tense phone call on Wednesday, Trump told the leaders of Germany, France, and Britain that they should pressure Zelensky to accept the terms of the United States peace plan, which includes giving up Donbass and limiting the size of the Ukrainian army. Furthermore, in response, the Europeans invited Trump to meet with Zelensky. But the United States president has not yet decided whether to agree to this or not. Ukraine and its European allies have sent their proposal to the White House in response to Trump's peace plan. However, according to both sides, there are still major differences, especially regarding the territories from which Russia demanded the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops. We don't know how true this is or how much the Wall Street Journal is telling the truth. We see that in any publication, global, regional, local, whether American, Ukrainian, or European, there is actually a lot of disinformation all the time. So I always say that you need to use your head for everything, to be critical of absolutely every piece of information, any information at all. Whether you're listening to me, to some other blogger, or reading official or unofficial sources, always use your head. Because there is a lot of lies out there right now, a lot. Next, regarding Zelensky's statements, he gave quite a few comments to the media today, and the first thing he mentioned was the elections. Two important things are needed for elections: security and legislation. Security, as he says, is supposed to be provided by Europe and the United States of America. The Verkhovna Rada was meant to provide legislation, but instead spent 4 years doing nothing and passing unnecessary laws about multiple citizenship. Instead of developing some effective methods for conducting elections. Why? They doubted elections could happen in Ukraine and wondered how long they could remain in power without them. They didn't know either, but likely assumed it would last a long time. But then the United States gave them a kick in the butt and they went to work on developing mechanisms for holding elections. Next, Zelensky says that the Russians want the whole Donbass, but we do not accept that. Zelensky says the United States seeks a format to resolve the territorial issue, possibly by creating a free economic zone, but Ukraine demands a ceasefire along the contact line. Our position is fair when we stand where we are, that is, on the line of contact. That's why there is an ongoing discussion between these different positions. This has not been determined yet. That's what Zelensky has said. Next, moving on, he also said that the issue of territories should be decided by none other than the people of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine will answer this question either in the format of elections or in the format of a referendum, but there must be a position of the people of Ukraine. That's what he said. He also emphasized that under this agreement, the Russians must withdraw their troops from the Sumy, Dnipropetrovsk, and Kharkiv regions. The issue of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is also very contentious because there are currently two problems in the agreements. The first is the withdrawal of troops from the territory of Donetsk region, and the second is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. What is he saying? According to Zelensky, the Russians want the nuclear power plant for themselves, but Ukraine is against this, while the United States supports a joint format for managing the plant. Although it's difficult for Zelensky to say right now what kind of consortium this will be. Next, the United States hasn't set any deadlines for adopting the peace plan, but they want to end the war as soon as possible. And Zelensky talked about wanting to end the war by Christmas, And here, the only question is whether the Americans will actually be able to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. And do you even believe that in 2025 there could be any kind of ceasefire along the front line? Because we see that since 2022, no, nothing like that has even come close to happening. Next, Zelensky also reported that for now he is not choosing a head of the president's office because he does not want to influence the work of the cabinet of ministers. He also told this to several Ukrainian media outlets. If I take someone from the current government officials, I'm afraid that they will spend weeks looking for candidates to replace them. Just like with the Ministry of Energy and Justice, they are currently seeking candidates for those roles. I don't want to ruin the cabinet of ministers, that's what Zelensky says. In my opinion, after the scandals with the Mindich tapes, this cabinet should basically have been dissolved and a new one formed. Yes, in a format, not just recruiting people from servant of the people, but bringing in ministers from different political forces. That would then, be a bit more like democracy, maybe. Because it turns out that they can't find people or willing candidates for ministerial positions among their own, since no one wants to be treated the way Shulyak and Halushchenko were, right? But at the same time, other political forces are excluded to avoid negotiations with them. And since 2022, even since 2019, they've already forgotten in the Ukrainian parliament what it means to negotiate, because there was a single party majority, which is still somehow, though awkwardly, being maintained. But they've forgotten what agreements are, what politics is, what diplomacy is, and so on. That's why we have what we have. Well, we see that Ukraine didn't fall apart after Yermak was removed from his position, and we can see that maybe the position wasn't that important after all. If Zelensky can manage without the head of the president's office, and by the way, he has repeatedly stated that maybe this position should be eliminated altogether, maybe it's not needed at all. Then the question is, why the hell was this position created in the first place? Maybe some of you know, write in the comments below that the latest peace plan caps the armed forces of Ukraine at 800,000 personnel. Here, basically, this is just basic news. It has been discussed, and who says that this is too little or too much? Friends, our army now has 800,000, maybe a million. Let's be honest, in peacetime, when there is no war, Ukraine will not be able to maintain a regular army. Even 800,000, even 500 or 400,000 is a huge amount of money that Ukraine simply doesn't have. And after the war, there will be even less, because support from partners will decrease. That's clear. So 800,000 is okay. And by the way, the military leadership also agreed to this. Next, Ukraine and the United States will sign agreements on the economy and reconstruction, as well as on security guarantees, Zelensky says. These could be parallel processes with a possible Marshall Plan equivalent for Ukraine. I don't believe in that because the level of corruption is too high. The Americans know this very well, and no one will send money here. They aren't reacting to the Mindich tapes and so on right now. They're not reacting for one simple reason. They've stopped giving money and they're not interested. So why the hell would they? America has started giving money now. Looking at the fact that not a single corrupt official has been sent to prison with full confiscation of property, everyone got out on minimal bail and is just walking around free. Mindich even left the territory of Ukraine in a very important person taxi. By the way, there's some very interesting information about Mindich. We'll get to it in a moment. Next. The United States doesn't want to see us in NATO, just like there are certain agreements between the United States and Russia that we don't know about. Over time, all secrets will be revealed, but I want to remind you that the United States promised Russia that NATO would not expand any further. That's the information. Next, Volodymyr Zelensky also reported that Ukraine and the United States had a conversation regarding security guarantees. The head of state reported that from the United States side, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and General Keane were present, and Hrankevich and Josh Grunbaum. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also joined the conversation. What did they talk about now? It's important that this document on security guarantees contains specific answers to what concerns Ukrainians the most. What actions will our partners take if Russia decides to come with its aggression again? Let's be honest, there won't be any response. No one will come to help. And if anyone thinks that Europe or the States will send their troops to war if Russia attacks Ukraine for the third time, let's be honest. They could do it now, but they will say exactly the same things they said back in 2022. We don't want to provoke the Russians because it's a nuclear state and there will be a third world war. So even though Britain and the United States, according to the Budapest Memorandum, could have brought in their troops and shown the Russians what's what, but we see that they chose a different path. They chose to make Ukraine the shield of Europe, porcupine as they call it, and so on. Why? What do you choose? You have your country, and for example, there is a war somewhere in Africa. Many people are dying there. There are constant acts of genocide happening there. And they tell you, let's gather 50,000 people in Ukraine and send them to fight in Africa. What did Ukrainians say to that? Of course, they wouldn't agree to it. Yes, so you can understand them here as well, and moreover, they see that as long as Ukraine holds on, Russian troops are also tied up. So this also delays the question of a possible Russian attack on NATO in the next few years. So that's the story. Next. Now let's move on actually to Kolomoiskyi. Yes, today he was finally brought to court. Yesterday he reported about Mindich. Actually, yes. Zelensky's associate from the 95th Quartal, as well as the leader of a criminal group. As previously reported by National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine in Operation Mindich, which they are conducting, those are the same Mindich tapes. An attempt was made on his life. This was said yesterday. Kolomoiskyi at the court. And immediately information started spreading that this is all untrue. First of all, the Ukrainian ambassador to Israel says that the Israeli police have not received any reports about an attempt on Mindich's life. But the story is a bit different because Kolomoiskyi said that these were supposedly killers. They mixed up the houses and they entered a house that was either next door or across the street. And Mindich didn't live in that house, so they got the house wrong and stabbed the housekeeper with a knife. And she ended up in the hospital and they were actually detained. So it's logical that the police can't consider this an attempt on Mindich if they got the house wrong and didn't even get to him. Basically, they had nothing to do with it, but everyone understands why they were there and everyone understands that it was just a simple mistake. The next thing in the attempt on Mindich is the Ukrainian connection, Kolomoiskyi said in court. Yes, here now, per Kolomoiskyi's statements. Kolomoiskyi says the Israeli Internal Security Service is handling the case, so there will be no press or statements. Next, two so-called freelancers were in Israel for a year and a half. They came from Ukraine. They were recruited at the embassy, but not by the Security Service of Ukraine or Main Intelligence Directorate. There is always a representative of the Foreign Intelligence Service at the embassy, and he asked the question, who appointed the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine? This question is probably for you. Write your answers in the comments. He also stated that the attackers were given the pistol at the embassy of Ukraine. Again, it's unclear how true this is. He adds it's still good for Zelensky if Mindich stays in Israel, so Mindich remains safe and healthy, especially as they're friends. Next, Kolomoiskyi stated that the freelancers who attempted to assassinate Mindich might be lying about receiving weapons at the Ukrainian embassy. If everything goes well in this case, it will pass quietly and there will be no international scandal. He also said that Mindich was involved in serious business. When there is that kind of money, there is always danger. Those were the statements. What do you think about all this? Write in the comments. It will be very interesting to hear and read your opinion. If you've watched up to this point, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, friends. Have a great day. See you.